My wife became best friends with my unemployed brother who was staying in our guest room and started going on dinner dates together using my credit card. So when she announced her pregnancy, I didn't tell her about my vasectomy until I had all the evidence of her affair and served divorce papers at her parents' doorstep. I own a property management company in Cedar Falls. My wife Rachel, 32F, and I, 35M, got married 4 years ago. Before we married, I made it clear that I never wanted children. She agreed completely. We had multiple conversations about this over the years we dated. She always said she preferred her career and freedom over motherhood. That agreement was one of the main reasons I proposed. The house we live in belonged to me before the marriage. I bought it 6 years ago when my business started doing well. It has 4 bedrooms and sits on 2 acres outside the city limits. Rachel moved in after the wedding. We never got a prenup because I trusted her completely back then. Our finances were joint. I handled most of the bills since my income was significantly higher than hers. She worked as an event coordinator at a hotel downtown. About 7 months ago, something changed in our marriage. Rachel became distant. She stopped cooking the meals we used to make together on weekends. She stopped asking about my day. When I came home from work, she was either in another room on her phone or already asleep. We went 3 weeks without having a real conversation beyond basic household logistics. I tried to bring it up twice. Both times she said she was just tired from work. I backed off because I did not want to push. Then one evening in late March, I came home to find the house filled with cooking smells. Rachel had made pot roast with all the sides. She was wearing the blue dress I bought her last Christmas. She smiled when I walked in and kissed me at the door. We had not done that in weeks. During dinner, she asked about my day and laughed at my stories about difficult tenants. She held my hand across the table. After we finished eating, we watched a movie together on the couch. She fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I went to bed that night thinking maybe whatever rough patch we hit was over. I thought we were going to be okay. 2 days later, my brother Jaden, 29M, called me. He had gotten kicked out of his apartment. His landlord found out he had been seeing a tenant's daughter who was barely 21. The tenant filed a complaint. The landlord gave him a week to leave. Jaden asked if he could stay with us temporarily while he found a new place. I was hesitant. Jaden had a reputation. He worked in sales and spent most of his money on bars and dates. He had never kept a relationship longer than 3 months. When we were younger, he borrowed money from me 5 times and only paid me back twice. But he was family. I told him I needed to talk to Rachel first. When I brought it up that evening, I expected resistance. Rachel had never liked Jaden. At our wedding reception, she told me she thought he was immature and untrustworthy. She once said she would never want him around our house for more than a dinner visit. So when she immediately agreed to let him stay, I was surprised. She said family was important and that we had the space. She even suggested he take the guest room on the main floor since it had its own bathroom. Jaden moved in the following Saturday. He brought 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. He set up his game console in the guest room and started playing music loud enough that I could hear it in my home office. Rachel complained about it that first week. She said he left dishes in the sink and did not pick up his towels in the bathroom. She asked me to talk to him. I pulled Jaden aside one evening after dinner. I told him he needed to be more considerate since he was staying in our house for free. He apologized and said he would do better. Then I made a mistake. I told him that if he wanted to stay without constant tension, he should try to get along better with Rachel. I said she was already doing us a favor by agreeing to this arrangement. Within 2 weeks, things shifted. Rachel stopped complaining about Jaden. I started seeing them together in the kitchen in the mornings. They were drinking coffee and talking. One Saturday, I woke up to find them both gone. When they came back 3 hours later carrying grocery bags, Rachel said they decided to go shopping together since I was still asleep. Jaden started cooking breakfast on weekends. Rachel sat at the counter and talked to him while he made eggs and bacon. They started running together in the evenings. Rachel had never been a runner. She always said she hated cardio. But suddenly she was coming home in workout clothes with Jaden, both of them sweating and laughing about something that happened on their route. I asked if I could join them one evening. Rachel said I would slow them down since I had not trained. The meals changed. Rachel stopped making the dinners I liked. She started cooking things Jaden requested. Pasta with marinara sauce. Chicken wings. Burgers. When I mentioned I missed the salmon she used to make, she said she was trying new recipes. Jaden started having inside jokes with her. They would reference something that happened when I was not around and laugh together. I would ask what was funny. They would wave it off and say I had to be there. I started noticing charges on our joint credit card. Dinners at restaurants I had never been to. Tickets to a baseball game. A leather jacket from a department store downtown. When I asked Rachel about the jacket, she said she bought it as a thank you gift for Jaden helping around the house. I did not remember him helping with anything. The dishes still piled up. The trash still needed to be taken out by me every week. One Friday evening in early May, I came home from work to find both of them dressed up. Rachel was wearing heels and makeup. Jaden had on a button-down shirt. They said they were going to a new restaurant that opened across town. They did not invite me. Rachel said they figured I was too tired from work. I watched them leave together in her car. They came back after midnight. I heard them laughing in the driveway. When they came inside, Rachel went straight to the guest room with Jaden. I could hear them talking through the wall for another hour before she finally came to our bedroom. She smelled like wine. When I asked if she had a good time, she said it was fine and turned away from me to sleep. I spent that entire weekend trying to figure out what was happening. Nothing about their behavior made sense. Rachel had spent years telling me how much she disliked my brother. Now they acted like best friends. I could not bring myself to believe it was an affair. Rachel had always been loyal. She talked about cheaters with disgust. But something was wrong. On Monday morning, I told Jaden he needed to find his own place. I gave him 2 weeks. He asked why the sudden deadline. I said he had been here long enough and needed to get back on his feet. He nodded and said he understood. When Rachel got home from work that evening, she asked why I gave Jaden a deadline. I said he had overstayed his welcome. She called me petty. She said I was being unreasonable and jealous for no reason. I asked her why she was so defensive about my own brother leaving our house. She said Jaden had been good company while I was always working. She said I barely talked to her anymore and Jaden actually listened. That comment stayed with me for days. I had tried to talk to her during those months she was distant. She was the one who shut down every conversation. Jaden moved out 2 weeks later. He found a studio apartment near his work. The day he left, Rachel barely spoke to me. She spent the evening in our bedroom with the door closed. When I went in around 10, she was sitting on the bed drinking wine. Her eyes were red. She did not say anything to me. I asked if she was okay. She said I had ruined everything and I did not even care. I asked what I had ruined. She stood up and started yelling. She said I forced Jaden out because I could not handle her having a friend. She said I was controlling and insecure. I told her their relationship had crossed boundaries. She asked what boundaries. I mentioned the late dinners and the private jokes and the way they acted like a couple. She called me disgusting for suggesting anything inappropriate happened. She said I was sick for thinking that way about my own brother. I did not bring it up again. We did not speak for 3 days. Then one evening in late May, I came home to another surprise dinner. Rachel had made lasagna. She was cheerful again. She asked about my day and poured me a glass of wine. We ate together at the dining table. Halfway through the meal, she put down her fork and said she had something to tell me. She said she was pregnant. I put my fork down. I stared at her. She was smiling. She said she had known for a few weeks but needed time to process it herself before telling me. I asked her how far along she was. She said about 2 months. I did the math in my head. 2 months ago, Jaden was still living here. I did not say anything right away. She kept talking. She said she knew we had agreed not to have children but plans change. She said this was happening whether I liked it or not. She said I needed to accept it and be supportive. She reached across the table and tried to take my hand. I pulled it back. I told her I needed time to think. She looked confused. She asked what there was to think about. I said this was a big change and I was not prepared. She said I had months to prepare. Then she stood up and walked to the bedroom. I heard the door close. I sat at that table for 2 hours. My mind kept going back to one thing. 3 years ago, I had a vasectomy. I never told Rachel. It was a medical decision I made before we even met. I had always known I did not want children. The procedure gave me peace of mind. I never saw a reason to discuss it with her because we were on the same page about being child-free. Now that decision was the only thing standing between me and a lie. If I told her about the vasectomy now, she would know I knew the baby was not mine. She would have time to prepare a story or hide evidence. I needed to stay quiet and gather proof first. That night, after Rachel fell asleep, I took her phone from the nightstand. I knew her passcode. She had never hidden it from me. I opened her messages and scrolled through her conversation with Jaden. The messages went back months. There were photos. There were texts about how much they missed each other. There were plans to meet up after he moved out. There were messages about me. Rachel had written that I was boring and never paid attention to her anymore. Jaden had responded that she deserved better. I scrolled further back. I found messages from when Jaden still lived with us. They had talked about sneaking into the guest room while I was at work. There were messages sent at times when I was home. They had been together in my house while I was in another room. I put the phone back on the nightstand. I got up and went to the guest bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the floor. I stayed there until the sun came up. The next morning, I called a family lawyer my business partner had recommended once. I made an appointment for that afternoon. I left work early and drove to his office downtown. I explained the situation. I brought printed copies of the messages from Rachel's phone. I brought my vasectomy records from my doctor. The lawyer looked everything over and nodded. He said I had grounds for an at-fault divorce based on adultery. He said the vasectomy records were solid proof the child was not mine. He asked if I wanted to proceed. I said yes. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked with the lawyer to prepare the case. We documented everything. We pulled records from the joint credit card showing all the charges Rachel made during the time Jaden lived with us. We collected the message logs. We prepared a timeline. The lawyer filed the divorce papers. He had them ready for delivery. I did not tell Rachel any of this. I came home every evening and acted normal. She talked about baby names and nursery colors. She showed me pictures of cribs online. I nodded and said we would figure it out. She seemed happy again. She talked about how this baby would bring us closer together. Every word made me want to leave the room. On a Saturday in mid-June, Rachel went to visit her parents 2 hours away in Millbrook. She said she wanted to tell them about the pregnancy in person. She left around 9 in the morning. As soon as her car was out of the driveway, I started packing her belongings. I boxed up her clothes and shoes. I packed her toiletries and books. I loaded everything into my truck. It took 4 trips to fit it all. I drove to Millbrook and parked outside her parents' house. I unloaded the boxes onto their front porch. I placed a folder on top of the boxes. Inside the folder were 3 things: the divorce papers, copies of my vasectomy records, and printed logs of her messages with Jaden. I drove back home. I changed the locks on the house. I called my lawyer and told him it was done. My phone started ringing an hour later. It was Rachel. I did not answer. She called 6 more times. Then her father called. I answered that one. He started yelling immediately. He said I was a coward for not handling this like a man. He said I had responsibilities now. I told him no man has responsibility for another man's child. He kept yelling. I hung up. Rachel sent dozens of messages over the next few hours. She said I had humiliated her in front of her family. She said the baby was mine and I was insane. She said she would take me to court. I did not respond to any of them. That evening, I called my parents. I told them everything. I sent them copies of the evidence. My mother called me back 30 minutes later. She said she had already called Jaden. She told him he was not welcome at family events anymore. She said she was ashamed of what he had done. My father got on the phone and said he supported whatever I decided to do next. Jaden called me 2 days later. He said he was sorry. He said he made a mistake and things got out of hand. He said Rachel was coming after him for child support now and he did not know what to do. He asked if I could help him figure something out. I told him he made his choice and now he had to live with it. I hung up. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Rachel tried to contest it. Her lawyer argued I had not given her a fair chance to explain. My lawyer presented the evidence. The judge granted the divorce and awarded me the house and full separation of assets. Rachel got nothing except what she brought into the marriage. I have not spoken to her since I dropped off her belongings. Jaden moved to another state last month. I heard from my mother that Rachel had the baby in December. I do not know anything beyond that. I do not want to. The house is quiet now. I work during the week and spend weekends maintaining the property. I hired a property manager to handle some of the day-to-day tasks so I have more time for other things. My parents visit once a month. My mother still apologizes for Jaden every time she comes over. I tell her it is not her fault. Some days I think about what I could have done differently. Most days I just focus on work. Update 1: I did not plan to write an update, but some things happened that I needed to document somewhere. A few people messaged me asking how things turned out, so I figured I would post this. About 2 weeks after my last post, Rachel started showing up at my office. The first time, my assistant called me and said someone was in the lobby asking for me. I went down and found Rachel standing by the front desk. She looked different. Her hair was shorter. She was wearing clothes I did not recognize. She asked if we could talk. I said no and walked back upstairs. She came back 3 more times that week. Each time, I had my assistant tell her I was unavailable. On the 4th visit, she waited in the parking lot until I left for the day. She walked up to my truck as I was getting in. She said she just needed 5 minutes. I told her anything she needed to say could go through her lawyer. She said her lawyer told her to stop contacting me, but she did not care. She said I owed her a conversation after 4 years of marriage. I asked her what she wanted. She said the divorce was a mistake. She said she had been confused and scared when she found out she was pregnant. She said Jaden had manipulated her and she did not realize what was happening until it was too late. She said if I just gave her another chance, we could fix everything. I asked her if she really thought I would believe that. She started talking faster. She said Jaden had been the one to pursue her. She said he took advantage of her loneliness when I was working long hours. She said he made her feel special when I was ignoring her. She said none of it would have happened if I had been a better husband. I got in my truck and locked the doors. She stood outside my window and kept talking. She said she made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes. She said I was being cruel by refusing to even listen. I started the engine and backed out of the parking space. She moved out of the way but followed my truck to the exit. I drove home and she did not follow me past the parking lot. She stopped coming to my office after that. But 2 weeks later, my mother called and said Rachel had contacted her. Rachel told my mother she was struggling financially and needed help with medical bills. She said the baby had some health issues and she could not afford the treatments. My mother asked if I knew anything about this. I said I did not and I did not want to know. My mother said she just wanted to make sure I was aware in case Rachel tried to use this to manipulate me. I thanked her and ended the call. A week after that, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered because I thought it might be a client. It was Jaden. He said he needed to talk to me about Rachel. I told him I had nothing to say to him. He said Rachel was telling people the baby might actually be mine. He said she was trying to get him to agree to a paternity test that listed me as a possible father. He said he wanted to warn me in case she tried to involve me in court. I asked him why he was calling me about this. He said he thought I should know what she was planning. I asked him if he was still in contact with her. He said she had been calling him nonstop since the baby was born. He said she was demanding money and threatening to take him to court if he did not pay. He said he barely had enough to cover his own rent. He asked if there was any way I could talk to her and get her to back off. I told him he created this situation and he needed to handle it himself. He said I was his brother and family was supposed to help each other. I reminded him that he slept with my wife in my house. I said he lost the right to ask me for anything the moment he did that. He started saying something else but I hung up. That same week, I got a letter in the mail from Rachel's lawyer. It was not related to the divorce. It was a notice that Rachel was filing a paternity claim against me. The letter stated she was alleging I was the biological father of her child and requesting a court-ordered paternity test. I called my lawyer immediately. He said this was expected. He said Rachel was trying to create doubt about the timeline and establish me as financially responsible. He said the vasectomy records would shut this down but we needed to respond officially. We filed a response with the court. We included my medical records showing the vasectomy and the date it was performed. We requested the paternity claim be dismissed on medical grounds. The court scheduled a hearing for 6 weeks later. During those 6 weeks, Rachel tried to contact me 2 more times. Once through a mutual friend from her workplace who called and said Rachel just wanted closure. I told the friend I had nothing to say. The second time was through a letter she mailed to my house. The letter was 4 pages long. She wrote about our early relationship and how happy we used to be. She said she still loved me. She said the baby deserved a father and I was the only person she trusted to fill that role. She said Jaden was unreliable and would never step up. She said if I could just forgive her, we could raise the child together and move past everything. I threw the letter away. The court hearing happened on a Wednesday morning. I took the day off work and met my lawyer at the courthouse. Rachel was there with her lawyer. She looked tired. She was holding a baby carrier. I did not look at the baby. We went into the courtroom and sat on opposite sides. The judge reviewed the paperwork. Rachel's lawyer argued that vasectomies were not always permanent and there was a chance I could still be the father. My lawyer presented the medical records and testimony from my doctor confirming the procedure was successful and I had follow-up tests proving sterility. The judge asked Rachel if she had any evidence to contradict the medical records. Her lawyer said they did not. The judge dismissed the paternity claim. He said Rachel was wasting the court's time and warned her against filing frivolous claims in the future. The hearing lasted less than 20 minutes. As we were leaving the courtroom, Rachel tried to approach me in the hallway. Her lawyer pulled her back. My lawyer told me to keep walking. I went to my truck and drove back to the office. I have not heard from Rachel since then. My lawyer said she has 30 days to appeal the decision but he doubts she will. He said she has no grounds and no lawyer would take the case. Jaden called me one more time last week. He said he was moving to Arizona for a new job. He said Rachel was still demanding money from him and he wanted to get as far away as possible. He said he knew I probably did not care but he wanted me to know he regretted everything. I did not respond. He said he hoped someday I could forgive him. I hung up. My mother asked me if I was doing okay. I said I was fine. She said she worried about me being alone in that big house. I told her I preferred it that way. She dropped the subject. Things are quiet again. I go to work. I come home. I handle my properties. On weekends, I work on projects around the house that I had been putting off for years. Last weekend, I repainted the guest room. I got rid of the bed Jaden used and replaced it with a desk and some bookshelves. I am turning it into a home office. Some people have asked if I plan to date again. I do not think about that much. Right now, I am just focused on my business and my own space. Update 2: I was not planning to post again but I wanted to close the loop on a few things since some people kept asking what happened with Rachel and Jaden. In late September, about 2 months after my last update, I got a call from my mother. She said Jaden had called her asking for money. He told her he lost his job in Arizona and was behind on rent. He said Rachel was taking him to court for child support and he could not afford a lawyer. My mother told him she was not giving him any money. She said he made his choices and needed to deal with the consequences. He apparently started crying on the phone and said the whole family had abandoned him. My mother told him he abandoned the family when he slept with his brother's wife. Then she hung up. A week later, Jaden called me directly. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. He said he was desperate and needed help. He said Rachel's lawyer was coming after him for back child support and medical expenses. He said if he did not pay, they were going to garnish his wages. He said he knew I had no reason to help him, but he was begging me to reconsider. He said he would pay me back eventually. He said he just needed a loan to get through this rough patch. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the whole thing. My mother called me again a few days later. She said Jaden's ex-girlfriend from before all this happened had reached out to her on social media. The ex-girlfriend said Jaden owed her money too. She said he had borrowed several $1,000s from her while they were dating and never paid it back. She said she saw my mother's post about family drama and wanted to warn her that Jaden had a pattern of using people. My mother thanked her for the information. She told me she felt like an idiot for not seeing who Jaden really was sooner. In early October, I got another letter from Rachel's lawyer. This one was not addressed to me personally. It was a notice that I was being called as a witness in Rachel's child support case against Jaden. The letter said my testimony about the timeline of events was relevant to establishing Jaden's paternity and financial responsibility. I called my lawyer. He said I could not refuse the subpoena, but I only needed to answer the questions asked. He said to keep my answers short and factual. The hearing was scheduled for late October. I showed up at the courthouse on the assigned date. Rachel was there with her lawyer and the baby. Jaden was there with a public defender. I sat in the waiting area until they called me in. The courtroom was smaller than the one from the paternity hearing. There was no jury. Just the judge and the lawyers. Rachel's lawyer asked me to confirm the dates Jaden lived in my house. I confirmed them. He asked if I observed Rachel and Jaden spending time together during that period. I said yes. He asked me to describe their behavior. I said they went to dinners together, went running together, and spent significant time alone in the house. He asked if I suspected an affair at the time. I said I suspected something was inappropriate but did not have proof until later. Jaden's lawyer asked me if I ever saw Rachel and Jaden engage in any physical affection. I said no. He asked if I had any direct evidence they were involved beyond the text messages. I said the messages were the evidence. He tried to argue the messages could be interpreted different ways. Rachel's lawyer objected. The judge sustained the objection. The whole thing took about 30 minutes. After my testimony, they dismissed me. I left the courthouse and went back to work. My lawyer called me later that day and said the judge ruled in Rachel's favor. Jaden was ordered to pay child support and cover half of the medical expenses. The amount was based on his income, which was apparently not much. My lawyer said Jaden would probably be paying a few $100s a month. I did not hear anything else about it until mid-November. My mother called and said Jaden had been evicted from his apartment in Arizona. He could not afford rent after the child support payment started. She said he called her asking if he could move back home with our parents. She said my father told him absolutely not. Jaden apparently got angry and said the whole family was turning their backs on him when he needed help the most. My father told him he turned his back on the family first. Then he hung up. My mother asked if I thought they were being too harsh. I said no. She said she felt guilty sometimes, but then she remembered what he did and the guilt went away. I told her she had nothing to feel guilty about. Around Thanksgiving, I ran into Rachel at a grocery store. I was picking up supplies for the week. I turned down an aisle and she was standing there with the baby in a cart. We made eye contact. She looked like she wanted to say something. I turned around and walked to a different aisle. I finished my shopping and checked out. As I was loading bags into my truck, she came up behind me in the parking lot. She said she did not plan to ambush me. She said she just wanted me to know she was sorry for everything. She said she knew I would never forgive her, but she needed to say it anyway. I did not respond. She said Jaden was not helping with the baby at all despite the court order. She said he sent one payment and then stopped. She said she was working 2 jobs now to cover expenses. She said her parents were helping, but it was not enough. I closed the tailgate on my truck. She kept talking. She said she wished she could go back and make different choices. She said she ruined her life and mine. She said the baby deserved better than what she could provide. I got in the truck and closed the door. She stepped back. I drove out of the parking lot. That was the last time I saw her. In early December, my mother told me Jaden had moved in with a friend in Nevada. She said he was working at a warehouse and barely making enough to survive. She said he stopped calling the family. My father said good riddance. I spent Christmas with my parents. My mother made dinner and we watched old movies. She did not mention Jaden or Rachel once. It was the most peaceful holiday I had in years. A few weeks ago, my lawyer called and said the divorce was officially finalized in all respects. There were no more loose ends. He said Rachel could not come after me for anything related to the marriage or the child. He said I was completely free and clear. I thanked him and ended the call. I have been working on the house a lot lately. I finished the home office in the old guest room. I redid the landscaping in the front yard. I am planning to renovate the kitchen next spring. The property management company is doing well. I hired 2 new employees last month to handle the growing client list. Some people have asked if I feel better now that everything is settled. I do not know if better is the right word. I feel like I am moving forward. I do not think about Rachel or Jaden most days. When I do, it is more like remembering something that happened to someone else. I am not angry anymore. I am just done. Update 3. This will be my last update. I am only posting this to answer the questions people keep sending me and to close out this whole situation. In January, my mother called and said Jaden was in the hospital. He got into a car accident in Nevada. He was not seriously injured, but he totaled his car and had no insurance. He called my parents asking them to help cover the medical bills and the cost of a new vehicle. My father told him no. Jaden apparently broke down on the phone and said he had nobody else to turn to. My father said that was his own fault. My mother felt bad for a few hours after the call, but my father reminded her that Jaden made his own choices. I did not reach out to Jaden. I did not feel the need to. In early February, I got an email from Rachel. I do not know how she got my work email, but she did. The email was long. She wrote about how hard things had been since the divorce. She said she was barely making ends meet. She said Jaden had not sent a single child support payment since November and she could not afford to take him back to court. She said her parents were helping, but they were retired and did not have much to give. She said she was not asking me for money, but she wanted me to know the situation. At the end of the email, she said she hoped I was happy. She said she hoped I found someone who treated me better than she did. She said she would always regret what she did. She said she knew I would never respond, but she needed to say it anyway. I did not respond. I deleted the email. A week later, I got a message on social media from the ex-girlfriend my mother had mentioned before. The one Jaden owed money to. She said she saw my mother's post about the family situation and wanted to reach out. She said she had been following the story and felt like she needed to warn me about something. She said Jaden had a pattern of targeting women who were in stable relationships. She said when they were dating, he admitted he got a thrill out of pursuing women who were married or engaged. She said he told her it was a game to him. I thanked her for the information. I did not ask for details. I did not need them. Around the same time, my lawyer called and said Rachel's lawyer had contacted him. Rachel was trying to reopen the divorce settlement. She was claiming financial hardship and asking for spousal support. My lawyer said this was a long shot on her part since the divorce was finalized and she had committed adultery. He said we would file a response denying the request. He said not to worry about it. The court denied her request 3 weeks later. My lawyer said Rachel's lawyer did not even put up much of a fight. He said it was a desperate move on her part and she probably knew it would not work. I have not heard from Rachel since then. My lawyer said if she tries to contact me again, I should document it and let him know. So far, she has not. Jaden called my parents one more time in late February. He told them he was moving back east and wanted to reconcile with the family. My father said there was nothing to reconcile. He said Jaden burned every bridge he had and nobody was interested in rebuilding them. Jaden apparently hung up without saying anything else. My mother asked me if I thought they should give Jaden another chance eventually. I said that was their decision, but I would not. She nodded and said she understood. Last month, I started dating someone I met through work. She manages a small commercial property downtown. We got coffee a few times and then dinner. She knows about the divorce and the situation with Rachel and Jaden. I told her everything early on because I did not want any surprises. She said everyone has a past and she was not interested in judging me for something that was not my fault. Things are going well so far. We are taking it slow. I am not in a rush to get serious again. She seems to understand that. The house is almost completely renovated now. I finished the kitchen last week. I replaced the countertops and the cabinets. I got new appliances. It looks like a different place than it did a year ago. I like it better this way. My business is doing better than ever. I hired a third employee this month. We are expanding into property acquisitions and I am excited about the direction things are going. I still think about everything that happened sometimes. Usually late at night when the house is quiet. I think about the warning signs I missed. I think about the conversations I should have had with Rachel before things got so bad. I think about whether I could have handled the situation with Jaden differently. But mostly, I just think about how much better my life is now compared to a year ago. I have my own space. I have a business I'm proud of. I have family who supported me through the worst of it. I have the freedom to build whatever kind of life I want without someone lying to me or using me. Rachel made her choices. Jaden made his choices. I made mine. I am not responsible for their consequences. I am only responsible for my own life. I am done looking back. I am focused on what is ahead. That is all I have to say about this situation. I will not be posting any more updates. To everyone who sent supportive messages or shared their own stories, I appreciate it. To everyone who asked questions or wanted more details, I hope this gave you the closure you were looking for. I am moving on. I suggest everyone else does the same. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. Sister and her husband moved into my house after he lost his job, then demanded I move my wheelchair-bound daughter out of her specially modified room so they could have more space. The real truth about why they really wanted that room will shock you. I never thought I would be writing this, but here I am. My sister Brittany, 28F, and her husband Derek, 31M, moved into my house 3 months ago after Derek got laid off from his construction job. I am Becky, 34F, and live with my partner Josh, 36M, and my daughter Lily, 8F, who has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. Let me give you some background first. Brittany and I grew up in different households after our parents divorced when I was 12. She lived with our mom while I stayed with our dad. We reconnected about 5 years ago when Lily was 3. Brittany seemed genuinely interested in being part of our lives and Lily adored her aunt. Derek always seemed nice enough, though he never said much during family gatherings. Their housing situation became desperate in February. Derek lost his job right before Christmas and they burned through their savings by January. They were renting a 2-bedroom apartment across town but fell behind 3 months on rent. Brittany called me crying one evening saying they had received an eviction notice. She asked if they could stay with us temporarily while Derek looked for work. Josh and I talked about it that night. Our house has 3 bedrooms. We have the master bedroom, Lily has her room which we modified for her wheelchair accessibility, and there is a small guest room that we use for storage and Josh's home office setup. The guest room has a twin bed and basic furniture, but it is cramped with Josh's desk and computer equipment. I told Brittany they could stay but explained our space limitations. The guest room was available but Josh needed to keep his office set up since he works from home 2 days a week. I also mentioned that Lily's room was specially arranged for her needs and could not be changed. Brittany agreed immediately and thanked me repeatedly. Derek nodded along when she told him about the arrangement. They moved in the following weekend with just their clothes and personal items. We helped them put most of their furniture in a storage unit that cost them $50 a month. The first week went smoothly. Brittany helped with cooking and Derek started applying for jobs online using Josh's computer when he was not working. Lily enjoyed having her aunt around and Brittany read to her most evenings. Derek mostly kept to himself but was polite. Problems started during the second week. Brittany began making comments about the guest room being too small for 2 adults. She mentioned that Derek was having trouble sleeping because the bed was narrow and his feet hung off the end. I suggested they could look into getting an air mattress for extra space but Brittany just nodded without much enthusiasm. Then Brittany started asking questions about Lily's room. She wanted to know why we gave such a big room to a child when adults needed more space. I explained that Lily's room needed to accommodate her wheelchair, her special bed with railings, her physical therapy equipment, and her chest of drawers that we had lowered for her to reach independently. The room looked spacious because we had to keep pathways clear for her wheelchair, but it was actually quite functional for her specific needs. Brittany dropped the subject, but I noticed her looking into Lily's room whenever the door was open. She also started timing when Lily used the bathroom, which was the only fully accessible one in the house with grab bars and a roll-in shower that we had installed. 3 weeks into their stay, Brittany approached me while I was making breakfast. She said Derek was getting frustrated with their sleeping situation and it was affecting his job search. She suggested that maybe Lily could move into the guest room temporarily and they could use her room since it was larger. I told her that was not possible because the guest room was not wheelchair accessible and Lily needed her specialized setup. Brittany pressed the issue. She said Lily was small and would not need as much space as 2 adults. She also mentioned that Derek's back was hurting from the small bed and he had an interview coming up. I repeated that moving Lily was not an option and suggested they could look into getting a larger air mattress or folding bed for their room. That evening Derek spoke to me directly for the first time about their living situation. He was more blunt than Brittany had been. He said they were grateful for our help but the current arrangement was not working. He asked why a kid needed such a big room when adults were cramped in a space meant for one person. I explained about Lily's accessibility needs again but Derek just shook his head. Derek said he understood Lily had special needs but she was just a child and children adapt easily. He suggested we could make the guest room work for her and even offered to help move her equipment. I told him the guest room had stairs leading to it and was on the 2nd floor while Lily's room was on the main floor near the accessible bathroom. Derek said they could carry her upstairs when needed. I ended the conversation there and told Josh about it later. Josh was surprised by Derek's suggestions and agreed that moving Lily was completely out of the question. We decided to have a family meeting to clear the air and set boundaries. The meeting did not go well. Brittany and Derek sat across from Josh and me at our kitchen table. I started by saying we were happy to help them but needed to establish some ground rules about our living arrangement. Brittany immediately interrupted and said they had been thinking the same thing. Derek took over the conversation. He said they appreciated our generosity but felt the current room assignment was unfair. He pointed out that they were contributing to groceries and helping with household chores while being squeezed into the smallest room. He said it made more sense for the adults to have the larger rooms and for Lily to take the guest room. Josh spoke up and explained that we had spent thousands of dollars making Lily's room accessible and safe for her. He described the specialized equipment and modifications that could not be easily moved. Derek dismissed this and said kids were resilient and Lily would adjust to a new room. Brittany added that they were not asking for our master bedroom, just for a fair distribution of space. She said Lily spent most of her day in the living room anyway, so the size of her bedroom should not matter as much. She also mentioned that they were adults who needed privacy and space to decompress after stressful days of job hunting. I told them that Lily's room assignment was not negotiable. The room was designed specifically for her needs and moving her would compromise her safety and independence. I offered to help them rearrange the guest room furniture to maximize space or look into other sleeping solutions. Derek's tone changed. He said we were being unreasonable and putting a child's preferences over adult needs. He mentioned that they had been nothing but helpful and respectful since moving in. Brittany nodded and said they felt like they were being treated as second-class citizens in our home. The conversation escalated when Derek said that if we were going to be stubborn about room assignments, maybe we should consider letting them use our master bedroom since it had the most space and an attached bathroom. Josh immediately said no and pointed out that we were already sharing our home and did not need to give up our own bedroom too. Brittany started crying and said they felt unwelcome and like they were imposing. She mentioned that our mom had said we should be more accommodating to family in need. Derek put his arm around Brittany and said they might need to look for other options if we could not be more flexible. I told them they were welcome to stay as long as they respected our house rules and understood that some things were not open for negotiation. Derek stood up and said they would think about whether this arrangement was working for anyone. Brittany followed him upstairs without saying anything else. The next morning Brittany barely spoke to me. Derek avoided eye contact completely. The atmosphere in the house became tense. They stopped helping with cooking and Derek spent most of his time out of the house supposedly job hunting. Brittany stayed in their room or left to visit friends. This continued for another week. Lily started asking why her aunt was not reading to her anymore. Josh mentioned that Derek had been using his computer at odd hours and leaving food crumbs on his desk. I tried to talk to Brittany but she gave short responses and said everything was fine. Last Sunday things came to a head. I was helping Lily with her physical therapy exercises in the living room when Brittany came downstairs. She watched us for a few minutes then asked if she could talk to me privately. We went to the kitchen while Josh continued working with Lily. Brittany said she had been doing research online about children with disabilities and learned that many families make adjustments to accommodate everyone's needs. She said she found examples of kids with wheelchairs living in smaller spaces and suggested that maybe we were being overprotective of Lily. She offered to help modify the guest room to make it more accessible. I explained again that the guest room was upstairs and would require major renovations to be suitable for Lily. Brittany said that seemed like an excuse and that we could install a stair lift or carry Lily when needed. She also suggested that Lily might benefit from learning to adapt to different environments. At that point I lost my patience. I told Brittany that she clearly did not understand Lily's needs despite living with us for over a month. I said that asking us to compromise our daughter's safety and independence for their comfort was selfish. Brittany started crying again and said I was calling her a bad person for asking reasonable questions. Derek came downstairs during our argument and immediately took Brittany's side. He said I had raised my voice at his wife and accused me of being defensive about criticism. He said they had tried to approach the situation diplomatically but I was being unreasonable. He added that they were starting to question whether staying with us was worth the drama. I told them both that if they were unhappy with our accommodations they were free to find other arrangements. Derek said maybe they would do exactly that and stormed back upstairs with Brittany. They spent the rest of the day packing their belongings and making phone calls. That evening Brittany came to me and said they had decided to move in with Derek's brother who had a larger place and was more understanding of their situation. She said she hoped we could maintain our relationship despite this disagreement. Derek loaded their car the next morning without saying goodbye to any of us. They have been gone for 2 weeks now. Brittany has not returned my calls or texts. Our mom called yesterday and said Brittany told her I chose my daughter over family and refused to compromise. Mom said she was disappointed in how I handled the situation and suggested I should have been more creative in finding solutions. Josh thinks I did the right thing but I keep wondering if I could have handled this differently. Lily has asked about Brittany several times and I am not sure what to tell her. I feel like I lost my sister over something that should have been straightforward. Was I wrong to refuse to move my disabled daughter out of her accessible room for my sister's comfort? Update 1 I did not expect the response my post received but thank you to everyone who commented. Most of you confirmed what Josh had been telling me, that we did nothing wrong by protecting Lily's needs and accessibility. Some people asked for more details about what happened after Brittany and Derek left. I thought the drama was over but I was wrong. Things got much more complicated and I learned some information that changed how I view the entire situation. The day after my original post, Brittany's friend Jessica, 26F, contacted me through Facebook. Jessica and Brittany have been close since college and I had met her a few times at family gatherings. She said she needed to talk to me about something important regarding Brittany and Derek's living situation. We met for coffee that Saturday. Jessica seemed nervous and kept checking her phone. She told me that Brittany had been staying at her apartment for 3 days after leaving our house, not at Derek's brother's place like Brittany had told me. Jessica said Brittany had been crying constantly and seemed scared of something. According to Jessica, Derek had become increasingly controlling over the past year. She said Brittany had mentioned that Derek made all their financial decisions and had access to all her accounts. Jessica also said that Derek had been pressuring Brittany to ask me for money, not just housing. Brittany had apparently refused because she knew Josh and I were saving for Lily's future medical expenses. This was completely new information to me. Brittany had never mentioned money problems beyond Derek's job loss. Jessica said Brittany was embarrassed about their financial situation and Derek had made her promise not to discuss it with family. Jessica believed Derek had pushed Brittany to ask for Lily's room because he wanted to establish dominance in our household and test how much control he could exert. Jessica also told me something that made my stomach drop. She said Derek had made several inappropriate comments about Lily during the time they stayed with us. He had apparently told Brittany that disabled children were a financial burden and suggested that we were wasting money on Lily's equipment and therapies. Jessica said Brittany had defended Lily, but Derek kept pushing the topic. I asked Jessica why she was telling me this now. She said Brittany had confided in her 2 days ago that Derek had found a new place for them to live, but it was with people Brittany did not know and she was afraid to go. Brittany had asked Jessica if she could stay longer, but Jessica's lease only allowed for short-term guests. Jessica gave me Brittany's new phone number because she had been forced to change it. Derek had been monitoring her calls and texts. Jessica said Brittany wanted to reach out to me but was afraid I would reject her after how things ended. I called Brittany that evening. She answered on the first ring and immediately started apologizing. She said she was sorry for how Derek had behaved and admitted that she had been too scared to stand up to him while they were staying with us. Brittany said Derek had been pressuring her to get more from our family and she had gone along with it to avoid arguments. Brittany explained that Derek had lost his job because he failed a drug test, not because of layoffs like they had told me. He had been using cocaine regularly and hiding it from Brittany until recently. She found out about the drug use 2 weeks before they moved in with us, but Derek convinced her not to tell anyone because it would hurt his job prospects. Brittany also admitted that Derek had never intended to respect our house rules. He had planned from the beginning to push for better accommodations and had coached Brittany on what to say. She said he became angry when I refused to move Lily and started blaming Brittany for not being persuasive enough. The conversation was difficult. Brittany cried through most of it and kept apologizing. She said she realized how wrong their demands had been but felt trapped because she had nowhere else to go. She explained that Derek controlled their finances and she had no access to money for her own place. I asked Brittany where she was staying now. She said Derek had found a house where they could rent a room from his drug dealer. Brittany was terrified, but Derek said it was temporary until he got back on his feet. She said the other people in the house made her uncomfortable and she barely left their room. Brittany begged me not to tell our mom about Derek's drug use because she was ashamed. She also asked if there was any way she could come back to stay with us without Derek. I told her I needed to talk to Josh and think about everything she had told me. Josh and I had a long discussion that night. He was sympathetic to Brittany's situation but worried about bringing more drama into our home. We were also concerned about Derek's reaction if Brittany left him and came back to us. Josh pointed out that Derek knew where we lived and had already shown controlling behavior. I decided to research domestic abuse resources and learned that financial control and isolation were common tactics. Brittany's situation fit many of the patterns described online. I realized that her behavior during their stay might have been influenced by Derek's manipulation rather than her own desires. The next day I called Brittany back and offered to help her leave Derek. I said she could stay with us temporarily while she figured out her next steps, but Derek would not be welcome in our house under any circumstances. Brittany was quiet for a long time, then said she needed to think about it. 3 days later Brittany called me from a police station. She said Derek had become violent when she told him she was considering leaving. He had grabbed her arm and twisted it when she tried to pack some clothes. Brittany had managed to get out of the house and called 911. Brittany had a bruise on her arm and scratches on her face from the incident. The police took photos and helped her file a restraining order against Derek. Brittany asked if my offer to help was still open because she had nowhere else to go. Josh and I picked Brittany up from the police station that evening. She had only the clothes she was wearing and her purse. Derek had kept all their belongings, including Brittany's identification and bank cards, at the house where they were staying. Brittany has been with us for 5 days now. She is staying in the guest room and seems grateful for any accommodation. She spends time with Lily every evening and has apologized repeatedly for Derek's behavior. Brittany has also started looking for work and applied for assistance to get her identification replaced. The situation is not completely resolved. Derek has been calling from different numbers trying to reach Brittany. He showed up at our house once but left when Josh answered the door and mentioned the restraining order. Brittany is working with a legal advocate to recover her belongings and access her bank accounts. I am still processing everything Brittany told me about what really happened during their stay with us. I feel guilty that I did not recognize the signs that she was being controlled and manipulated. Brittany says she tried to hint at problems but was too scared to be direct. Our mom still does not know the full story. Brittany is not ready to tell her about Derek's abuse or drug use. Mom continues to think that Josh and I were unreasonable about the room situation. Brittany says she will explain everything to Mom when she feels stronger. Some people might wonder why I'm giving Brittany another chance after how things went the first time. The truth is that she is my sister and I believe she was a victim of Derek's manipulation. Her behavior makes more sense now that I understand what was really happening behind the scenes. Lily is happy to have her aunt back and does not seem to remember the tension from before. Brittany reads to her every night and helps with her exercises. Josh is still cautious but agrees that Brittany deserves support to get away from Derek. I am not sure what will happen next, but for now Brittany is safe and that feels like the most important thing. Update 2: A lot has happened since my last update and unfortunately not all of it has been positive. Brittany's situation became more complicated and I learned some disturbing information about my own family that has changed my perspective on everything. Brittany had been staying with us for about 3 weeks and seemed to be making progress. She found a part-time job at a local grocery store and was working with advocates to get her life back on track. The restraining order against Derek was still in effect and he had not contacted her directly for over a week. Brittany had also started therapy through a program for domestic violence survivors. She was learning about the manipulation tactics Derek had used and beginning to understand how her behavior had been influenced by his control. She apologized to Josh and me several more times for the demands they had made about Lily's room. During this time Brittany was still hesitant to tell our mom about what really happened with Derek. She was afraid mom would blame her for not leaving sooner or judge her for staying with an abuser. I encouraged Brittany to share the truth when she felt ready but did not pressure her. The situation changed suddenly 3 weeks ago. Brittany received a call from our mom saying that Derek had contacted her directly. Derek told mom that Brittany was lying about him being abusive and that she had actually cheated on him with Joshua. Derek claimed this was why Brittany wanted to stay at our house and why I was supporting her story. Mom called me immediately after talking to Derek. She was upset and confused by his accusations. I tried to explain that Derek was lying and manipulating the situation, but mom said she needed to hear Brittany's side of the story directly. Mom demanded that Brittany call her that evening to clarify what was really happening. Brittany was terrified when I told her about Derek's call to mom. She said this was exactly the kind of retaliation she had feared. Brittany explained that Derek had threatened to ruin her relationships with family if she ever left him. She had hoped the restraining order would prevent him from carrying out those threats. Brittany did call mom that night and told her everything about Derek's drug use, financial control, and physical abuse. Mom's response was not what either of us expected. Instead of offering support, mom questioned why Brittany had not told the family sooner and suggested that Brittany must have done something to provoke Derek's behavior. Mom also said she found it suspicious that Brittany had moved back in with us so quickly after the police incident. She wondered if Brittany and I had planned the whole thing to get Derek out of the picture. Mom mentioned that Derek had sounded sincere and concerned about Brittany when he called her. This conversation devastated Brittany. She had finally worked up the courage to tell mom the truth, and instead of receiving support she was met with doubt and blame. Brittany cried for hours after the call and said she regretted ever trusting our family with her situation. 2 days later mom showed up at our house unannounced. She said she wanted to see Brittany in person and assess the situation for herself. Mom also brought our Aunt Carol, 52F, who is mom's sister and has always been involved in family drama. The visit was uncomfortable from the start. Mom and Carol sat in our living room and questioned Brittany about her relationship with Derek. They asked detailed questions about the abuse and wanted to know why Brittany had not sought help sooner. Carol suggested that Brittany might be exaggerating Derek's behavior to gain sympathy. Mom also brought up the original conflict about Lily's room. She said Derek had told her that Brittany only asked for reasonable accommodations and that Josh and I had been inflexible and hostile. Mom said she was starting to think there was more to the story than what Brittany had told her. At this point Josh intervened and asked Mom and Carol to leave. He said they were re-traumatizing Brittany and making unfair accusations. Mom said she had a right to understand what was happening with her daughter. Carol added that the family needed to stick together and work through problems instead of taking sides. Brittany barely spoke during the entire visit. She answered direct questions but otherwise stayed quiet. After Mom and Carol left, Brittany said she felt like she was being interrogated by people who were supposed to support her. She wondered if she had made a mistake by telling them the truth about Derek. The next week brought more unwelcome surprises. Brittany received a call from Derek's brother Tony, 29M, who said he wanted to help resolve the situation between Brittany and Derek. Tony claimed that Derek was in rehab for his drug problem and wanted to make amends with Brittany. Tony suggested that Brittany should consider giving Derek another chance since he was getting help. Brittany told Tony she was not interested in reconciling with Derek and that the restraining order was still in place. Tony became pushy and said Brittany was being stubborn. He also mentioned that Derek had told him about problems in Brittany and Derek's marriage that were not Derek's fault. Tony implied that Brittany had been difficult to live with and had contributed to Derek's stress. I was present during part of this phone call and took the phone from Brittany when Tony became aggressive. I told Tony that Brittany did not want contact with Derek or his family and that they needed to respect the restraining order. Tony said I was interfering in their marriage and threatened to call the police and report that Brittany was being held against her will. Josh immediately called our lawyer who had helped Brittany with the restraining order. The lawyer advised us to document all contact from Derek's family and report any threats to the police. She also suggested that Brittany might want to consider moving to a different location if the harassment continued. That weekend brought the most disturbing revelation of all. Brittany received a call from Jessica, the friend who had first told me about Derek's controlling behavior. Jessica said she had been contacted by our mom who was asking questions about Brittany's relationship with Derek. Mom had apparently asked Jessica if she thought Brittany was telling the truth about the abuse. Jessica was shocked that Mom was doubting Brittany's story. She told Mom about specific incidents she had witnessed where Derek had been controlling or inappropriate. Jessica also mentioned Derek's comments about Lily being a financial burden. Mom's response was to suggest that Jessica might be biased because she was Brittany's friend. What Jessica told me next made me physically sick. Mom had asked Jessica directly if she thought Brittany and Josh were having an affair. Mom said Derek's accusations seemed plausible because Brittany had always been close to me and spent a lot of time at our house. Mom wondered if Brittany had invented the abuse story to cover up infidelity. Jessica assured Mom that there was absolutely no truth to Derek's accusations and that the suggestion was ridiculous. She told Mom that Brittany loved Derek despite his problems and had never expressed romantic interest in anyone else. Jessica said Mom seemed disappointed by this response and continued to ask leading questions about Brittany's motives. When Brittany heard about Mom's conversation with Jessica, she completely broke down. She said she could not believe that her own mother would entertain Derek's lies over her daughter's word. Brittany felt betrayed by the person who should have been her strongest supporter. Brittany made a decision that surprised me. She said she could not continue to live in a situation where her own family doubted her and she needed to start completely over somewhere else. Brittany had been saving money from her job and had enough for a security deposit on a small apartment across town. Brittany moved out of our house last week. She said she needed space from all the family drama and wanted to focus on healing without worrying about who believed her story. Brittany thanked Josh and me for our support but said she could not handle the stress of ongoing family conflict while trying to recover from her relationship with Derek. I have not spoken to Mom since learning about her conversation with Jessica. I am disgusted that she would doubt Brittany's abuse claims and entertain Derek's manipulative lies. Josh says he is not surprised because Mom has always been drawn to drama and conspiracy theories. Brittany texts me occasionally to let me know she is safe, but we have not seen each other since she moved out. She says her new apartment is small but peaceful and that she is continuing with therapy. Brittany also got a second job and is working on becoming financially independent. Derek violated the restraining order 2 weeks ago by showing up at Brittany's workplace. Brittany called the police and Derek was arrested. He spent 3 days in jail before being released on bail. Derek's court date for the restraining order violation is next month. Lily asks about Brittany sometimes but seems to understand that her aunt needed to move to her own place. I have not told Lily about the family drama or Derek's accusations. Josh and I are trying to maintain normal routines while dealing with the stress of everything that has happened. I am disappointed in how my family handled Brittany's situation. Instead of supporting an abuse victim, they chose to question her credibility and entertain the lies of her abuser. This experience has shown me sides of my mom and extended family that I did not know existed. Update 3: This will be my final update about Brittany's situation and everything that happened with our family. The past 2 months have brought resolution to some issues while creating permanent changes in others. Brittany's legal situation with Derek was resolved last month. Derek pled guilty to violating the restraining order and received 6 months of supervised probation along with mandatory anger management classes. He was also ordered to pay Brittany's legal fees and stay away from her workplace and residence. Derek's brother Tony continued trying to contact Brittany for several weeks after Derek's arrest. Tony sent messages through social media claiming that Derek was a changed man and deserved forgiveness. Brittany blocked Tony and all of Derek's family members on all platforms. She also changed her phone number again to stop unwanted contact. Brittany has been doing well in her own apartment. She was promoted to full-time at the grocery store and picked up weekend shifts at a coffee shop to increase her income. Brittany also completed a computer skills course and is applying for office jobs that would pay better than retail work. Brittany and I meet for lunch once a week now. She seems much calmer and more confident than she was during the chaos with Derek and our family. Brittany says therapy has helped her understand how she became trapped in an abusive relationship and given her tools to recognize manipulation tactics in the future. The situation with our mom reached a breaking point 6 weeks ago. Mom called me demanding to know why I was supporting Brittany's lies about Derek. She said she had spoken to Derek again and he convinced her that Brittany was mentally unstable and making up stories for attention. Mom suggested that Brittany needed psychiatric help rather than encouragement to pursue legal action. I told Mom that I was done discussing the situation with her. I explained that her refusal to support Brittany was harmful and that I would not listen to any more victim blaming or conspiracy theories. Mom said I was choosing Brittany over family unity and that I would regret taking sides. Mom then made a comment that ended our relationship permanently. She said that if Brittany was really being abused, she would have visible injuries and would have left Derek immediately. Mom added that Brittany was probably exaggerating normal relationship problems because she wanted attention and financial support from the family. I hung up on Mom and have not spoken to her since. Josh supported my decision completely and said Mom's comments were disgusting. We agreed that we would not expose Lily to that kind of toxic thinking about abuse victims. Our Aunt Carol tried to mediate between Mom and me a few weeks later. Carol called and said the family needed to come together and forgive each other for things said during a stressful time. She suggested that everyone was partially right and partially wrong about Brittany's situation. I told Carol that there was no middle ground when it came to supporting abuse victims. Carol said I was being dramatic and that Derek seemed like a nice young man who had made some mistakes. She mentioned that Derek had been sober for 2 months and was working on improving himself. Carol also said that Brittany should consider reconciling with Derek if he continued making progress. She pointed out that marriage required forgiveness and that Brittany had not tried hard enough to help Derek with his problems. Carol suggested that Brittany's decision to involve police and lawyers had escalated the situation unnecessarily. I ended that conversation quickly and told Carol not to contact me again about Brittany or Derek. I also warned Carol that if she tried to pressure Brittany directly to reconcile with Derek, I would report the harassment to Brittany's lawyer. Brittany learned about these conversations through Jessica, who was still being contacted by various family members seeking information. Brittany was hurt but not surprised that Mom and Carol were taking Derek's side. She said it confirmed her decision to distance herself from family members who could not support her. Brittany decided to write a letter to Mom explaining exactly what Derek had done during their relationship and the impact of Mom's response to her disclosure of abuse. Brittany spent weeks working on the letter with her therapist to make sure it was clear and factual without being emotional or accusatory. Mom's response to Brittany's letter was to forward it to Derek. Mom told Derek that Brittany was still spreading lies about him and suggested that he might want to take legal action for defamation. Derek used information from the letter to find Brittany's new address and sent her flowers with an apology note. Brittany called the police about Derek contacting her again. The detective handling her case said Derek had technically not violated the restraining order because he used a delivery service rather than approaching Brittany directly. However, the detective warned Derek that any further contact attempts could result in additional charges. Brittany also learned that Mom had been sharing details about Brittany's therapy and recovery process with other family members. Mom had apparently told several relatives that Brittany was seeing a therapist because she was confused about what really happened in her relationship with Derek. Mom suggested that therapy was helping Brittany realize she had been mistaken about Derek being abusive. This betrayal of Brittany's privacy was the final straw for both of us. Brittany decided to cut contact with Mom permanently and asked me to do the same. I agreed because Mom's behavior had become harmful and dangerous to Brittany's safety and recovery. Josh and I have not spoken to Mom or any of her family members for over a month now. We told Mom's relatives that we would not discuss Brittany's situation and that anyone who continued to support Derek over an abuse victim was not welcome in our lives. Most of Mom's family chose Derek's version of events over Brittany's documented experience. Brittany has built a new support system through her therapy group and coworkers. She is dating someone new who knows about her past with Derek and has been respectful of her boundaries. Brittany says this relationship feels completely different because there is no pressure or control involved. Lily understands that some family members will not be part of our lives anymore, but she does not know the specific reasons. We have maintained Brittany's relationship with Lily because Brittany has always been loving and appropriate with her niece. Lily enjoys their weekly visits and Brittany continues to help with Lily's physical therapy exercises. Brittany's financial situation has stabilized and she is planning to start community college classes next year. She wants to study business administration and eventually work in an office environment. Brittany says having goals for the future helps her stay focused on moving forward rather than dwelling on what happened with Derek. Derek has apparently moved to another state with someone he met in his anger management class. Brittany learned this through Tony, who contacted Jessica despite being blocked by Brittany. Brittany was relieved to know Derek was geographically far away but worried that he might be starting the same pattern with a new victim. The whole experience taught me that supporting abuse victims sometimes means losing relationships with people who choose not to believe them. I am sad that Brittany lost the support of her mother during one of the most difficult times in her life. However, I am proud that Brittany found the strength to leave an abusive relationship and rebuild her life despite facing doubt from people who should have protected her. Brittany and I are closer now than we have ever been. She says that having someone believe her story and offer practical support made all the difference in her ability to escape Derek and start over. I am grateful that we were able to provide that support even though it cost us relationships with other family members. Josh and I have learned a lot about domestic abuse through this experience. We volunteer now with a local organization that helps abuse victims find housing and legal resources. Brittany sometimes speaks to new clients about her experience and the importance of having people who believe and support them. Our family looks different now than it did a year ago, but it feels healthier and more authentic. We choose to surround ourselves with people who share our values about treating others with respect and supporting victims of abuse. Brittany's strength in leaving Derek and rebuilding her life continues to inspire us every day.